Hey there, welcome to the DFS Build NBA edition. I'm Kevin Roberts, joined with Taylor Smith. As always, we're getting ready to break down the DraftKings NBA main slate. Should be a fun one. I think it's 7 games. Is it 6 games, right? Oh, maybe more. Is it 6 games?
8.
8.
Almost had
wrong.
it. Almost had it there,
so
buddy.
Close, but yet horribly wrong both times. Obviously, though, regardless of the slate size, the goal is to help you win. And the way we do that is we break down each position, highlighting our favorite plays, looking at projections and matchups and ownership percentage, all that fun stuff. And then also get into a little bit of strategy specific to the slate. Another thing we're doing is using Taylor's projections, which, by the way, they continue to absolutely smash. Last night is a really good example where Jalen Green was a guy that a lot of the projections were, reasonably high on, but not super high on. But Taylor's projections loved Jalen Green, and he got 51 fantasy points. Amen Thompson was another one. And those guys weren't very owned either. So I think that is something that gives you considerable edge using these projections, because then you can possibly get guys that everybody else out there playing in these tournaments is like, oh, they're okay. Maybe I'll play them. But then these projections are saying you absolutely should play these guys. So it's not going to be 100%. It's not, obviously you can't hit everything because of blowouts and injuries and that kind of thing too. But I think they are useful. Now, if that
we're going to try
helpful,
to find a way, just like we're talking about the projections, like
right.
We're going to try to find a way to, give them to subscribers and stuff. We're still figuring that out, but these will be available at some point. We're just going to iron out the details and then potentially give them out for a fee of some sort.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also it's just another reason to go ahead and subscribe now if you're not already, because you will eventually get access to those projections and also possibly a Discord when we go that route. And also any live shows we end up doing, you will need to be a subscriber to get access to all of that stuff. And right now, being a subscriber doesn't cost you anything. You can just subscribe to help support the channel and also hit that like button. That helps us out quite a bit too. But let's get into it. Position by position, starting at point guard, Taylor. Kade Cunningham continues to be a god in the projections. 53-point fantasy projection going up against the Blazers. I got nothing bad to say about Kade Cunningham. Obviously, this is not necessarily where I want to spend my high dollar money on this slate when you have Giannis and Wemby. But Kade looks really good, per usual. I think the only real issue here, I guess, would be blowout concern. How are you feeling about Kade tonight?
Yeah, he looks good. I don't think about the blowout. I think any of the games on this slate have monster spreads. I don't see anything above like 8. So as of now, I wouldn't be too concerned about that. Obviously, without Ivy, he's going to have a lot more usage. The minutes are always going to be there. He had foul trouble 2 games ago, which kind of fucked him over. And then he came back in the next game and completely smashed in a worse matchup against Minnesota. He's too cheap at 9.7. Like, he should be over 10K. He never really is. So happy to get to him. There are other point guard spends I like that aren't quite as expensive on this slate. So I have him in about 15% of my 500 builds I just ran. So decent amount of him. Pistons in general look pretty good on this slate against Portland. So he looks good, but not necessarily my a must-have at point guard.
No, and he is coming in with ownership at 24% too. So he's just a really good play. There's nothing wrong with him whatsoever. He projects well. He's averaging 50 fantasy points per game on the year. The Blazers are a very soft matchup. So if you want to go pay up for Kade at just under 10K, in addition to Wemby or Giannis, or just have him be your number one stud as far as where you're spending your money, I don't think that's a bad thing at all. He looks really, really good. If you want to drop down and save a little bit of cash, James Harden and Damian Lillard and Tyrese Maxey are all kind of close to him. Harden would be the closest at 8.9K. I don't love the matchup against the Timberwolves, but as you just said, Kade wrecked with 40 real points in that same spot. So maybe that is something we just should not worry ourselves with too much. That said, if I'm paying up right now at this position, I think Kade is the one for me. Harden projects well, but I just don't like it that much. Dame at 8.7, he's been really bad. Obviously, the matchup with the Raptors can certainly rectify that. And Tyrese Maxey, I think I will be more interested in him if Embiid ends up being ruled out. He is questionable, and he either would be sitting tonight or tomorrow. But as things stand, I think up in the expensive range, 8.5K to 10K, I think Kade is probably the play for me at point guard right now, if I'm spending up there.
Yeah, Harden is okay, but Kawhi's back, of course. That's going to eat into his usage a little bit. He's still going to get assists. He's still going to do things he does. So I think he's an okay play, but I think for Dame in the same range, Middleton is out. So Giannis and Dame are going to see more usage, and Lopez maybe a little bit. So Dame, now that we have that Middleton thing, it looks a little better than he did originally. Still under 9K. Pretty good bounce back spot against Toronto. They have a high total. I like that quite a bit. In the same game, though, I think is my favorite point guard on the slate, and that's Emmanuel Quickly. 7K flat. The Bucks have struggled ever since Dame arrived against high usage guards. That's kind of Quickly's game. He's been awesome when healthy this season, which has not been often, but I think his minutes are going to come up. He played 32 and 33 in his first 2 games. The Raptors don't typically take a long time to ramp their guys up. He was dealing with an elbow, so I'm not concerned about that aspect of it. There's potential for him to play like 35 or 36. I have him at 33, I think, right now, or 32, and even then he's popping as an extreme value at 7K flat. I think he's an 8K player at least, so I like the discount there. I like that game in general, Toronto-Milwaukee. Giannis we'll get to in a bit. Other spends, Devin Booker looks pretty good. They benched Bradley Beal and Yusuf Nurkic. They're going to be coming off the bench moving forward, apparently. So more usage is going to flow through Booker and Durant in the starting unit. Still think Beal's going to play 30 minutes, so it's not like he's out. But, Booker with the ball in his hands more often looks pretty decent in this spot. Phoenix going against Philadelphia. That's a pretty good game to target as well with a tight spread. I like KD more. We'll get to KD in a bit, but Booker's another fine spend in the 9K range.
Yeah, I find it hard to get to Devin Booker and feel really good about it. I think if I'm going to do Suns, KD would definitely be the guy. He projects better. And there's just other guys at point guard that I think in a somewhat similar price range feel better. Like I'd rather pay $900 more and get Kade Cunningham. I think Dame just projects better and is in a slightly better spot. I love the Quickly call. Emmanuel Quickly looks amazing. Honestly, he played 33 minutes last game, 32 minutes his first game back. Possibly no RJ Barrett tonight. So just going to have monster usage probably. And he's just way too cheap. So in the Bucks
had 11 assists in the last game. He shot 4 for 17 and 1 for 9 from 3. And he still got 33 fantasy points, which is not killing you necessarily. A better shooting night, along with his insane, he's just handling the ball a ton, essentially playing point guard. RJ Barrett's questionable. That'll put the ball in his hands more if he's out again. So Quickly looks pretty outstanding, I think, either way.
Yeah, I think he's still in play too, even if Barrett is in, but obviously I'd like him a lot more. But he's just so cheap that I don't really think the status of Barrett matters that much. You're just getting obviously more usage and more upside if Barrett is indeed out. Like you said,
Barrett
you only had him
in, and Quickly still popping.
Right, exactly. And you said you only have him protected for 33 minutes, and he's already coming in with a 38-point fantasy projection. I was going to say, I felt like his projection was actually a little bit light. Like, if we actually can feel confident about him getting 35, 36 minutes here, he's going to be one of the best projecting plays of the entire slate. So, at least relative to price. He looks really good. I will mention Tyrese Haliburton just because I feel like his projection is a little bit low, perhaps because the blowout risk there against the Nets. If that game stays close, Haliburton at 8.4K feels a little bit too cheap. Don't think I'm really going to get to him just because I'd rather go up to Cade or down to Quickly, but I think the price is nice. Chris Paul against the Bulls at 6K flat. I think he is interesting. Probably like in the same range of where you're looking at like Dinwiddie, Anthony Simons, Scottie Pippen Jr. I think you can certainly pivot to Chris Paul if those guys are all going to be chalkier. I think I like I was liking Scottie Pippen a little bit more earlier in the day. His projections come down, so I'm a little bit worried about that. He had a really nice projection earlier in the day, so I was like, yeah, he's gonna be a core play for me. But still, possibly is Bane in or out? Do we know for sure?
Doubtful, so probably out.
Okay, so no John Morant, no Marcus Smart, probably no Bane. I would imagine Pippen does get a few extra minutes here, and if that is true, then I think that we can expect the projection to end up, I think his output's going to end up going over where it is right now. So I do like him quite a bit. I just think there are options in that range. Spencer Dinwiddie's going to have a more expanded role with no Kyrie Irving. So all those guys look pretty good. Kobe White at 6.9 with no Ayo Dosunmu. I think that's fine. Simons against the Pistons as a run back possibly from Cade. Don't have a problem with that 6.4K. All those guys look just fine. I think Scottie Pippen is probably the one I like the most. You also have D'Lo at 5.5K if he's in. I would prefer Ben Simmons to be out to fall in love with D'Lo at 5.5, but he'd still be in play.
I mean, like the cams are out, so like D'Lo's going to get all the usage on this team if he's in. I'm not like Ben Simmons is not going to shoot the ball ever. So quickly, I mean, Russell at 5.5 is just like absurdly underpriced. He should probably be 7K. So if he's in, obviously he's dealing with a shin injury, which is a little complicated. But if he's starting, I feel good about it. He's probably dollar for dollar the best point guard play on the slate. If you, I guess Cole Anthony's in the conversation as well. Like those two are just way too cheap for their roles. So not having an easy time getting away from either of them. I think you're probably just playing them if Russell's in.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if D'Lo is in, then D'Lo looks really good at 5.5K. I do still prefer Ben Simmons to be out, and there is major blowout risk in that game, with especially if Ben Simmons is out. So it's kind of like an either or. Like you kind of want Ben Simmons to miss, so he doesn't have the ball in his hands extra time. But Ben Simmons not playing probably makes it a little bit more likely that they get housed. If D'Lo is out, I actually like Keon Johnson a little bit. Keon Johnson is about the same price, 5.3K. Obviously, the same good matchup against the Pacers. Last time out, 39 fantasy points. He almost had a triple-double. So if he's going to actually have that much usage and taking on playmaking ability, I do not mind Keon Johnson at 5.3. If Ben Simmons is out and D'Lo's in, I think Keon Johnson's still viable, but I kind of would prefer both those guys to be out to actually go with Keon, because if D'Lo's in, I would just play D'Lo, right? So that's where I'm at there. I don't see anything else down here that I feel like I have to go get. Lonzo at 4.2K. He has been getting minutes, projected for 23. I think that's okay if you want to save a little bit more money, get different. Don't think that's a priority. You see anything else down low that you're excited about?
I wouldn't say I'm excited about anything else. I think Tyus Jones is an okay mid-range guy. He's kind of like a junior Chris Paul, not much of a ceiling, but pretty steady floor. He's 5.4, so I don't think that's terrible. AJ Green should see a few more minutes without Middleton. He's under 4K. I think that's fine. Probably not playing him at point guard because it's a loaded position. You can play him at shooting guard instead, but I don't know. Nothing too exciting. There's
also Cole Anthony, who we kind of glossed over a little bit. You did mention him for a second, but he's like such an obvious play that I think, we're not really thinking about that. But the reality is, he did not deliver last time out against the Jazz in a smash spot, only 23 fantasy points, but his price has come down. He's only 4.9K now. He started last game. Whether he starts or not, I think is pretty irrelevant. It's another good spot for him. The Knicks are not the scary defensive matchup that they used to be. Not that it's like the most amazing matchup either, and trusting Orlando offensive players is not fun at all. But I think Cole Anthony looks awesome here. He projects decently. And I think he's a core play at 4.9K.
Yep. Not much to add.
All right. Let's kick it over to shooting guard, where a lot of these guys are going to be obviously useful there. Anthony Edwards dropped 50 real points a couple of games ago, so I will never tell you not to play Anthony Edwards again for the rest of my days. Hey, all things said, Anthony Edwards at 8.5K. It is a good price. He's a fine tournament play. He's not going to be owned very much. So he's fine. Devin Booker's fine. Nobody else projects that well here. So this looks like a spot to save. Obviously, Cole Anthony at 4.9K, like we said, can be one of those guys you can pair with D'Lo if D'Lo's in. Keon Johnson I also like I said. Malik Beasley looks okay with Ivy out and possibly Azar Thompson also out. So he could look a little bit better at 5.6K. If Azar is in, I don't know if I love it, but I'm like indifferent if that's the case. Zach LaVine does not project very well against the Spurs here, so I'm probably not going to do that at 8.2K. Devin Vassell looks really good. The projection is pretty light, but I think against the Bulls, he's a better play than the projections might suggest here. A lot of interesting plays in the Mavs Grizzlies game. You got Jalen Wells at 5.3K. You have Quentin Grimes at 5.5. A lot of good value in that game across the board. So I do like those guys a little bit. They're not popping off like in a crazy fashion, according to the projections here. But I do think as far as their price goes and what they're capable of doing, I think they look pretty good.
Yeah, I think Beasley's a really strong play, regardless of Thompson. He has a role. He's not cheap, but he's 5'6" for the minutes he can play. It's pretty good. Portland gives it up to everybody. Beasley's just shot the shit out of the ball this year, and I really like that spot for him. I think another sub 6K play that really stands out is Matherin. Not projecting for a lot of ownership. He's been really wide range of outcomesy, but he's got a ceiling for the dollar. The minutes are pretty secure for him in the starting unit. Indiana in general is just really volatile. Like you never really know who's going to go off, but the spot against Brooklyn's favorable. Their total is higher than their season average. Brooklyn's defense not very good, especially without Cam Johnson. So I think Matherin is someone kind of going a little bit undervalued. Similar play as Quentin Grimes. I think you have him pulled up there. No Luka, no Kyrie. Memphis plays at a super fast pace, so like Dallas might struggle offensively without those guys, but Memphis can kind of help you stay in the game with their pace. So I think he and Klay Thompson in the 5 to 6K range are both pretty good.
Yep.
Cole Anthony, D'Lo, we talked about. Tumani Kamara, Jeremy Grant's still out, so he and Abdi are going to see slightly bigger roles. Kamara's still under 5K. I think that's a decent spot. And that probably does it. Like Vassell looks like he's going to be really chalky. I'm happy to come in under that. Like I know the spot's really good, but not projecting that well for me at the moment. That probably does it. I think Matherin is the one that I really like here most of all.
Yeah, I think if I'm going down, like obviously Cole and D'Lo are the first two guys to look at. Cole you can use at point guard or shooting guard. D'Lo, if he's out, then you have to start looking at, okay, what am I going to do to get different here? Keon Johnson is an alternative there if that's the case. And like I said, I think we're both in on Grimes. I do like Jalen Wells quite a bit. He's getting good minutes, and if Bane is out, that's just going to be even more so the case. So a lot of interesting options at shooting guard. I think overall, I'm just paying down here. The nice thing is you don't have to it's not like we're punting really. Like technically you're punting the position, but playing Cole Anthony at 4.9 or D'Lo at 5.5 or Wells, like these other guys, they get really good minutes. They do have some upside. So it doesn't feel like a true punt. It doesn't feel like you're taking on major risk just to get away from what are perceived to be, not so great plays up top. All right. Over at small forward, Scotty Barnes comes in with the best projection at the position, but Denny Avdia, even though his price is coming up to 6.6, looks like one of the best plays of the entire slate. I almost made him a core play when I was putting together my short earlier, but just because the price has ticked up, and I think that with the studs on this slate, people might be a little bit hesitant to make him a core play. He is carrying a little bit of ownership at 17%. It's really tough to not play a Denny here, and the projection kind of puts it over the top for me. It's like Jalen Green last night, man. Like I came in liking Jalen Green, and then I looked at your projections and I was like, okay, well, I'm definitely playing fucking Jalen Green, and that's kind of what it is with Denny too. Denny has been hitting like every game. Every game he's been like 5.3, 5.5, whatever. And we're like, oh, I guess we have to play Denny because he's too cheap and he's no Jeremy Grant. It's the same thing. The only thing is prices come up a little bit. I don't even really give a shit. The projection's too good. He's sandwiched in between two 9K Raptors. Barrett might not even play, but even so, I just think Denny's the obvious call there. Norm Powell with Kawhi back, no thanks. Josh Hart at 8K against the Magic, that's a big no thanks. Paul George at 7-1 is okay if Joel Embiid is out. I don't mind that. If Embiid is in, that's a big no thanks for me. Levine seems to be very overpriced for his projection. I like the Clay call. I don't mind Matherin. Vassell's fine. These guys just are not like popping like Denny is. Like Denny is just like the home run call for me at small forward. Never in the world am I playing 7.9K Kawhi when he's on a limit. Then we get down to some of these guys that we already touched on, but one more I will add to the mix is going to be Jake LaRavia at 5K flat. He's not projected for monster minutes, but if Desmond Bane is out, I would imagine he does approach 30 minutes or more, and he might start here. So definitely on my radar too.
Yeah, I'll feel better about him if Kennard is out. Kennard's questionable, missed the last game. Minutes should still be okay for him, but 5K is not like a punt salary necessarily, so I probably need Kennard out to really like LaRavia. I think Avdia is just a very obvious play and not like he's going to be owned, but not overwhelmingly, it looks like. Wings against the Pistons just continue to smash. There was the Jimmy Butler game. There was the Anthony Edwards game the other night. Avdia is in that spot tonight. The role without Jeremy Grant is excellent. We like the Pistons. I think Denny is the most obvious run back from the Portland side. Asar Thompson, if he's in, completely smashed in the last game now that he was starting. Was benched the game before, surprisingly, but I assume they would start him again if he's healthy enough to play. He's only 4'6", good per minute guy. The steals and blocks are kind of the name of the game for him. So not necessarily a fluke outcome. Only 25 minutes in the last game, but cheap, good per minute, good matchup against Portland. I think he's an awesome play, even if he's in, despite the illness tag.
I'm going to need him to start, though.
Yeah, if he's off the
I
bench,
got
you
burned
run
so
far
bad.
away.
I got burned so bad the other day, right here,
Yeah.
where he didn't start.
Mm-hmm. The minutes are not guaranteed. I mean, they played well. They won. I think they won the game. So I'd imagine they'll start him again, and not Wendell Moore for some reason. So feel good about that. Mentioned Kamara here. Jalen Wilson is one of those Nets who's like okay, just because the minutes are through the roof for him, with all their injuries on the wing.
Very low floor. But yeah,
very low floor. Like he's not a good player.
If no Ben Simmons and no D'Lo,
yeah, like they're out of bodies.
Looks good.
You know, he's got to play 35 minutes, I assume. Full punt here. Jarris Walker is someone getting into some lineups just because he's 3-2 against the Nets. Okay, like if you need a full punt, but not a safe play by any means. I guess Jaden McDaniels is an okay filler, as he always is. Just going to rack up steals and blocks. The minutes are pretty safe. They're going to need his defense against Kawhi and Harden, so he's an okay, cheap guy. And let's see, one more worth a shout is Jet Howard. 25 minutes yesterday against Utah. He shot really well, but 25 minutes at 3K flat is pretty hard to come by. Orlando's injuries mean they just need as much offense as they can get. He was a lottery pick. Don't know if he's actually worth that, but 3K flat, you could do worse than that.
Interesting. Not projected for big minutes. No. I don't know how I feel about that one. Obviously, if we knew Jet Howard was going to get, 25 to 30 minutes at 3K, that would be a pretty easy play. So I don't know. If he starts, then I would consider it. But I think right now I'm probably not going to do that, especially since I have interest in Cole. But we'll see. We'll see how it moves along. All right, let's move on to power forward. Leading the way is Giannis with the 64-point fantasy projection. Nobody is close. So Giannis looks great. He's facing the Raptors. They're not going to provide much resistance to him. And they're almost at full strength, obviously. Whether or not Barrett is in, I mean, it should be a close game and a good amount of scoring. But if you don't want to pay up for Giannis at power forward, Kevin Durant looks pretty darn good, pushing for almost 50-point fantasy projection. As you noted, no Beal or Nurkic in the starting lineup anymore. I'm assuming they keep going with that. And if that holds true, then Devin Booker and Kade are just going to soak up a lot of the usage with the starters, or most of the usage rather. So he looks good at 9.3K. I don't love a road date with the Sixers in general, and if Bede is in, I really don't like it. So I like his I like his price and his projection, but I just don't see the need here with Jaren Jackson there at 9.1K. I think he's probably the better play. Doesn't come in with the same projection, and he is carrying ownership, but just monster usage. And he's honestly been crushing 41 plus fantasy points in 3 straight. He had a big 66-point fantasy outing 3 games ago, 57-50. Like he is just crushing out there. So I still like him at 9.1. Definitely the price has come up to the point where you can get away from him and hope he gets into foul trouble or just doesn't hit, because especially since he's carrying ownership, but he still looks good. If you're not using Denny at small forward, he looks awesome at power forward. Julius Randle, Siakam, these guys are nice prices and the projections are okay. Julius against Clippers probably isn't the spot I would like to use him, but he's okay. Siakam's okay. Jeremy Sohan, if we can actually trust his minutes in the spot with the Bulls, looks pretty interesting, honestly. 5.9K. His price has come down. His minutes have been a little bit wonky lately, but if he actually is going to play 31 minutes, he looks good. PJ Washington feels a little bit overlooked here. Going to get big minutes, going to get good usage with no Kyrie or Luka. I love him. I love him at 6.5K. He looks like a really good play if you want to pay down. Could pivot off of Denny Chalk if you wanted to. He's going to carry a little bit of ownership anyways. Could also just pair them together, which I might do if I can find the funds. And then Tobias down here at 5.4K, right there with Malik Beasley. He's going to start for the Pistons, and no Ivy opens up a little bit more usage for everybody. And he's been good in the last 2 games since Ivy got hurt too.
Yeah, he's probably a little too cheap, but there's a lot of cheap stuff that looks pretty good. Asar Thompson, Naz Reid is okay. I'm a little nervous about the Sohan thing just because he's been so horrible lately, but
right.
he's shown a ceiling on occasion. If the minutes come back up, the matchup really couldn't be better. So I'm willing to buy low on him here under 6K. KD over Jaren Jackson is definitely a hot take, but the matchup's really good for Durant. I mentioned Beal and Nurkic coming off the bench. Jackson's per minute rate has gone way down with Smart and Morant and Bane and Aldama out of the lineup over the last 2 years. Don't know if that's fluky or not, but it's a pretty big sample. The matchup against Dallas is mediocre at best for him also. I'm not really geeked about him at significant ownership. I think there are just ways to get away. And I think Durant's the obvious straight line pivot to me. But then if you want to pay all the way up, like Giannis is a fantastic play against Toronto, who offers no resistance. There's no Chris Middleton. Usage should be through the roof. It's Giannis. He's not really projected to be like mega chalk. If people are paying down for Jackson, I assume they just really won't bother with Giannis. But there should be more than enough value to get to Giannis pretty easily on this slate.
Yeah, I agree. I do like Jaren Jackson in a vacuum. Like I tell it, two things I don't like are the price. Like I'm not excited to pay 9.1K for Jaren Jackson. I don't even like paying like 7.7K for Jaren Jackson because he has a considerable ceiling and there's no like stud talent in Memphis right now. Their top guys are all out or projected to be out. So really nice ceiling and like all things relative. Like if you compare him to KD or Giannis or something, he definitely has the ability to get you 50 or 60 fantasy points, which would make him too cheap, right? It's just like it's just 9.1 Jaren Jackson Jr. doesn't feel great. And if he's going to be owned, like if he's actually going to pull 30% ownership or more, that's enough reason for me to certainly pivot to KD, pay up to Giannis, or just kind of go down at the position. Because as you noted, at small forward and power forward, lots of really good value guys. I like the Memphis guys. I like the Mavs guys. There's Pistons guys, Blazers guys. All these players look pretty good. So it's going to depend on, final injury news and starting lineups and that kind of thing. So like if Azar Thompson's in and starting, I love Azar Thompson at 4.6K. So why go pay for, Jaren Jackson Jr. at 9.1 if I could just put in Denny and Azar at my forward slots right away, right? Doesn't mean you can't go use them elsewhere. But my point is, I think at that ownership and that price, I don't mind being a little underweight at all, like you kind of were alluding to.
Yeah, I think a couple other names worth a shot. Brandon Clark under 4K. Memphis really shorthanded. Don't mind that. And then Siakam 6'9" is pretty cheap. The matchup against Brooklyn's a good one, especially if Simmons is out. So I think that's kind of a decent buy low too.
Yeah, Siakam's been kind of meh for sure, which is why his price has come down. But if that Nets game is going to stay close and you're using D'Lo and any other Brooklyn guys, and that's what you're pulling for, Siakam is a pretty good play. Obviously, Miles Turner and Tyrese Haliburton as well look pretty good, but Siakam coming down under 7K, certainly interesting. All right, over to center we go. Giannis still leads the way, top projecting player of the entire slate. He is going to pull ownership, and rightfully so. There's also Wemby for $200 less. I prefer Wemby. He's going to be a little bit less owned, probably. The matchup with the Bulls looks awesome. Just slightly below Giannis in projection. If that at all has a chance of leading to Wemby being under 20% owned and Giannis is going to be more owned, it's Wemby all day. And I just think he kind of offers at least a similar, if not better, ceiling at this point. Like Giannis obviously can crush and nuke the slate, but with Dame still there, and just like Wemby does not have like a comparable stud to take all that usage away like Giannis does. So I think just naturally his ceiling looks a little bit more appealing. But both, they're like pretty much the same play. Like if you want to play Giannis, play Giannis. I prefer Wemby today. You can save like $1,000 and go play Cat. I don't really love playing guys against the Magic that much. So if I'm going to pay up at center to the 10K range, I would just keep going and get Wemby or Giannis personally.
He's also questionable, which we didn't really talk about. But if he's out, like Brunson is an awesome play, even in kind of a mediocre matchup. But Brunson's someone you're going to want to play.
For sure. And then you can even look at OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, these guys, just Josh Hart. Yeah. Chua for value, punt at center. I think he's forward eligible too. But yeah, so if Cat is in, it's Cat. He's been crushing. He can easily get you 50 to 60 fantasy points. The projection's pretty good, even though the matchup isn't great. So I don't mind it. I just personally think I'd rather just keep going up and get Wemby or Giannis. You can also just drop down for a very similar projection with KD. There's also Joel Embiid if he's in. Embiid looks really good at 9.6K. And then obviously we talked about Jaren Jackson Jr. So I just think there's better options going up or down to the point where I don't feel like Cat is, a necessary option. I hope he's in, so I don't feel compelled to pay 8-9 for Brunson. But Brunson would look good with the usage bump for sure. I just hope Cat's in, so I don't have to mess with that because I don't really want to do that. Elsewhere, Zubac is a good price with a good projection. With Kawhi back and against the Wolves, don't think I really feel super compelled to do that, but I do like the projection and price. Pirtle looks way too cheap at 6.7. He projects decently. And if you don't know Barrett's there, you might get a little bit more usage. So I do like Pirtle for sure at 6.7. I think I mentioned Miles Turner. Projection is a little bit low, but the price is nice, and the Nets are a really good matchup. Goga's projection dips down against the Knicks here. But if no Cat, Goga could feast like pretty easily. DeAndre Ayton at 6.3 against the Pistons. DeAndre Ayton just feels like, he's so hit or miss. Like last time I played him, he was horrible, but look, it's 52 and 43. He does have a ceiling, and the Pistons are not a scary matchup. So he's in play. I'm done with Rudy Gobert, man. His minutes keep coming down because he's not very good.
Getting benched. They're playing Nas and Randall together over him.
As they should. Nas Reed forever and always 4.7K is a good per minute guy. Gets decent usage, so I don't mind him as a value play at all. I think there's better, safer value with more upside on this slate, but he's still in play at 4.7K. I don't think there's anybody else that really stands. I guess Isaiah Stewart was popping. I don't want to do that. 3.5K Isaiah Stewart. He had 25 minutes last game, but that's just not something I want to do. And then you mentioned Brandon Clark. I'm okay with that at a 20-minute projection with 3.9K price. That's okay. Just not something I feel like super, super excited about.
Yeah, I don't mind Stewart. Like, obviously, you're playing the backup center with him and Day'Ron Sharp. Like, they're kind of the same play as backup centers with limited minutes, but they're both so cheap and they're good per minute. I think it's okay. Obviously, you don't want to play Duren with Stewart or Claxton with Sharp, but in a large field set, I think they're both viable just because they're so cheap. Like the Pirtle call, like Giannis, obviously at the top. Embiid always looks underpriced, and he's been good. Kind of worried about being under the field on him, but Giannis and KD look so good to me that I'm just naturally under on Embiid. So a little frightening there, but totally fine to play him if you want to.
Yep. All right, so that does it for our position by position breakdown here. Let's end with our flag plant and overall strategy of the day. Is there one guy that you are like really feeling good about building around on the slate, whether it be a value or a stud?
Yeah, I'm going to try to go a little off the board. Like Avdia is obviously the one that stands out with Russell and Cole Anthony, but I think Quickly would be my flag plant just because he's not projected to be popular. I like the role, I like the price, I like the game environment. 7K flat for Quickly is too cheap, so I will be pretty heavily over the field on him today.
Yeah, I don't really have like a standout flag plant that is really against the grain here. I think, if anything, I just think Wemby is my favorite stud to pay up for, especially with Cade garnering ownership and Jaren Jackson garnering ownership and Giannis garnering ownership. I think it's possible that Wemby or Giannis end up going a little bit overlooked on this slate. And if that is going to be the case, that is where I'm going. Right now, it's going to be Wemby. Wemby seems like a cop-out of a flag plant for sure. So the other thing I will say is that I want to go pretty overweight on the Memphis and Dallas game. I think it's got the best projection on the entire slate, and it's a source of some of the best value of the slate, in my opinion. We just need to monitor the injury news and see who is in and out. Obviously, I need Desmond Bane to be out to feel better about Jake LaRavia and Jalen Wells. Those guys, and you mentioned Luke Kennard. That'd be nice if he's out. Those guys would get a considerable boost. And then also Scottie Pippen. So, like, if Bane is in, I don't want anything to do with Scottie Pippen at 6.2K. And if Kennard is in, I guess his ceiling dips a little bit. But in general, I really like that game. I think it looks good, a good spot to attack. In my general strategy, I think I'm just going one stud on this slate. I think I'm going to try to keep it relatively balanced, build around Wemby. And like, I think my second most expensive player right now is Denny Avdia. And the guy after that would be PJ Washington. So, like, I like those guys quite a bit. I might end up looking to go up over PJ and see if I can get to Quickly. For the most part, that's going to be if I have Giannis in my lineup, so I have like a mini stack in that game. But that's probably where I'm at on this slate. All right.
Sounds good to me.
Yep. So that does it for us. Thanks for tuning in. Hopefully this helps you out. If it does, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Remember, if you subscribe, eventually you will get access to live shows, Discord, and Taylor's projections, but you won't get any of that if you don't subscribe. So go ahead and do that now. Thanks for watching and good luck.